Jon Jones, Conor McGregor, and Dana White walk into the White House. Sounds like a setup for a joke, but it's the biggest, most controversial dilemma in UFC history. Next year, President Donald Trump is hosting a UFC event on the South Lawn, and the battle for the main event is a brutal choice between the lesser of two evils. The question isn't if it's happening, but who will be the headliner? Here's the full story behind the UFC at the White House. In the first 6 months of his second term at the White House, American President Donald Trump set a frenetic, fast-paced rhythm. The country was immediately plunged into chaos, tariffs with China, a Department of Government efficiency, and a spat with Elon Musk. This beautiful chaos led to an altercation with the National Guard, files that went missing, and his failure to sign the Qatar agreement. The promised ceasefire led to the outbreak of a regional war that he did not believe could be stopped until he himself intervened. After all that, we finally reached the 4th of July, Independence Day. The American president came out in front of a crowd of MAGA fans to conclude the first 6 months of his second term. He announced a historic UFC event would take place at the White House next year to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the United States of America's independence. The moment the announcement broke, every fighter under the UFC banner wanted a spot. With Dana White directly confirming the advertisement, no fighter held back their desire to compete. The biggest stars made huge schedule adjustments for the first half of next year. Tom Aspinall, for example, thanked God for his injury, preventing him from fighting before that event. Islam Makhachev also wanted a fight on that card, and even poor Khamzat Chimaev, who knows he won't set foot in the White House courtyard, tried to get a fight on this event. But the biggest headline this announcement generated was the return of presidential candidate Conor McGregor from his drunken hiatus. He announced he would be returning to fight at the White House. Then came the major surprise. Just days after officially announcing his retirement and relinquishing his heavyweight belt, Jon Jones reversed that decision. He announced his return to fighting and immediately re-entered the doping test pool. No American champion seems qualified to headline this event, not even Kayla Harrison, who is not ready for the task. The new American citizen, Merab Dvalishvili, is not American enough for the role. Dana White only has one option left, Johnny Bones Jones. But Dana knows the wrath of a man he wronged in the past, a man who will not rest until he gets his revenge. Dana is now using the White House event to pay back John for causing the biggest failure in his professional career, exhausting all options to set up the fight with Aspinall. Now, caught in this game of three between Dana, John, and Conor, we show you the highlights of the drama surrounding the UFC at the White House event. It won't be on American Independence Day, the 4th of July, as expected. Instead, it will be on the night of June 14th next year, Donald Trump's birthday. The strange thing is that this date is enough for you to understand who this event is really for, even though it is taking place during his era. Furthermore, it will be a pay-per-view event and will not be included with a Paramount Plus subscription. Dana White returned from his trip to the White House at the end of August, where he met with Ivanka Trump's father, the main person in charge of the event, to agree on logistics. Dana confirmed 100% that the event will take place during this impromptu broadcast. He used to advertise UFC 322. Had a long-ass day. It was a great day. About to take off here from Washington, D.C. White House fight is on. The White fight is on. I will have more next weeks. It was announced the event will be held live on the South Lawn of the White House with the Washington Monument in the background. 5,000 people will be allowed in the stands, which will be built in the South Lawn, and an estimated 85,000 people are expected to follow the event from outside on giant screens. The press conference and weigh-ins will be held on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. The fighters' warm-up area will be inside the White House. The week will most likely be a global fight week, and perhaps the annual UFC Fan Expo will be held at the National Mall. Of course, there will be a fireworks display. Imagine the price tag for replacing the South Lawn grass, $700,000. But this is nothing compared to the amounts Dana White will eventually command. These logistics are things that can be solved with money. The biggest difficulty is for Dana to keep his promise that he would create the best fight card in UFC history. The task wouldn't be so difficult if every fighter wasn't actively reaching out to Dana to fight at the White House. Jon Jones did so about 2 weeks after he announced his retirement, publishing this tweet. "You have just re-entered the test menu. Steroids lasted my retirement for 2 weeks." Unfortunately, no one paid much attention to Jon's announcement. He had lost all credibility with the public in recent months. Then, in the following days, he clearly stated that he wanted to fight at the White House. Dana White was asked about it and diplomatically dodged the answer. Then, one day in July, Jon went to an annual ASPA event where awards are distributed to the best athletes. He confirmed his return decision after retirement, and the main motivation for this was the White House. "I was retired. I felt like I was at a place where I've done it all in the MMA space and felt like there wasn't too many more challenges for me. And I just wanted to do something more than championships and money." And Donald Trump mentioned that he wanted to have a fight at the White House garden, and that just seems like such a huge opportunity. I'm very proud American. Then, during the official awards event, he publicly repeated his announcement. 3 days later, during the press conference after the UFC 3 event, where Dustin Poirier gave everyone a valuable lesson on how to retire, Dana White finally had the perfect way to get revenge on Jon, who had made his life a nightmare for more than 6 months, denying him the White House spot. Uncharacteristically, Jones, who usually sends strongly worded tweets when he disagrees with Dana, posted this calm tweet expressing his disappointment with Dana's comments. "I heard the following comments made by Dana v press conference last night with me. I felt a little disappointed, but I was still included list of doping tests in the UFC. I maintain my physical fitness and continue training. As a professional, I will be prepared for anything that comes along. For now, I will continue to work hard and be better with patience, and I will keep hope I am ready to fight on the 4th of July." With Jon officially returning to the testing list and Aspinall's unwillingness, of course, to go through the nightmare he went through in the past months with Jon, Dana White attended the post-fight conference for UFC 322 on the night of August 16th. When he was asked about Jon, he lost any hope of letting him fight at the White House. Oh, for the sweetness of revenge, it seems Dana couldn't believe he had this opportunity to pay back Jon for what he did to him last year. "I don't trust him, but I would like to see him fight as on that card down the road. So I already said that I don't trust him. And you're asking me, what could he do for me to trust him in the next months? You don't trust him. Yes, but you talk to him. I don't. No, I don't either. I haven't talked to him at all." As for poor Jon, he knows he cannot be hostile towards Dana, who forgives no insult. He posted this tweet, which shows the position of weakness from which he is negotiating and his complete submission to Dana White's will. "Despite the low percentage of chances, I am still training. I am optimistic about the possibility of being apart from the White House event. At the end of the day, Dana, he is the president and he is the one who decides whether I will compete that night or not, but I like my chances yet." As Jon Jones continues his rituals of public humiliation for the boss, "I'm training for the event. I'll be ready for the event. That's my goal. That's my intention. But it's up to the boss. My goal is to show how about his boss, Dana Don, saying, 'Listen, sorry how this all played out or whatever. I want to fight at the White House.' I'm serious about that, and just one of those type of, has that changed your view? No. So there's no chance he's going to be. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate him reaching out and doing that, but I need people I can count on for this fight, and I know who they are. I know who they are not. He has made it very clear to me that this is what he wants to do, but I need people on this card that I can count on. That doesn't matter what happens, opponents get switched out or whatever happens, I need guys that I can absolutely count on that are going to show up that night." So listen, I'm not saying no to Jon Jones, and I respect the fact that he's pushing this hard, but Jon Jones and I just had a deal that he pulled out of Even though I say all the time, the greatest of all time, he was just holding him back to teach him a valuable lesson. I don't know his honesty, but what I do know is that Alex Pereira's desire to move up to heavyweight just to fight John has increased his chances significantly. Despite Dana's lack of enthusiasm for the idea of Pereira moving up, it is impossible for Dana to refuse Alex's request. Alex decided to do so, so know that the matter has been decided. Perhaps the death of John's elder brother might have curtailed the gap between him and Dana. Yeah, talk to him few times. It is still possible to select the card for this event is far away, and all talk currently remains abstract speculation. I know that Dana is now living his best days with the dirty game he plays with John, and I know more than that. John speaking softly and respectfully is not the real John. If Dana doesn't put John on the White House card, he will eventually explode at everyone, including Dana White. Now, you're probably wondering, if Dana doesn't want John, who's the best alternative? The most amazing echo of everything we mentioned in this episode is that he considers Conor McGregor, the Irishman who withdrew from UFC 303 due to a finger injury, to be the man he can rely on to show up on fight night, whatever happens. Imagine that. This drunkard, dealing with cocaine addiction, claims of infidelity, and an ongoing political campaign in the midst of the Irish elections, is the man who Dana White clearly stated that he trusts more than John and every other fighter in the UFC. Presidential candidate Conor McGregor expressed his interest in fighting at the White House as soon as he heard Trump's announcement. A McGregor fight at the White House has a special flavor because, as a right-wing electoral candidate, his campaign policies are similar to Trump's. McGregor represents the core values of the MAGA base for the current administration in the White House. Imagine the President of Ireland coming to fight on the White House lawn. In his first press appearance since the White House event was announced, a seemingly high on coke, McGregor clearly stated that he was returning to the Oval Office, where he had been a few months earlier. His partner in BKFC, David Feldman, revealed Conor's plans to return to the UFC several days after that media appearance, specifically on July 15th, coinciding with the exposure of his scandal by Azealia Banks. Presidential candidate Conor McGregor mentioned Dana White for the first time alongside the White House event. Then, the next night, as his scandals spread like wildfire on social media, the drunkard announced his return to the testing list after losing the appeal in the case of Keelhan's sister. The spread of his strange training clips was a promise of hope to the long-suffering Michael Chandler. Conor officially announced the launch of his election campaign on September 4th. The following week, during the Canelo vs. Crawford media tour, Dana White went on to declare that he wants Conor to be the main fight at the White House because he can rely on him to get through the fight night no matter what changes. Not John, whom he does not trust in critical situations. And he wakes upstairs into the kitchen and finds out what happens. He says, "I'm going to the gym, call me later and let me know who I'm fighting." Almost nobody does that. He's not the greatest of all time, a guy you can count. The presidential candidate reaffirmed and guaranteed that the White House event would mark his return to fighting. One of the things that made me laugh the most was that a few days later, in September, Dana White recorded an episode on Logan Paul's podcast where he spoke about McGregor's chances of winning the Irish elections. I don't know where he got his statistics from, as all the numbers showed he had no chance. That day, a few hours before his appearance in front of Dublin City Council, where he was seeking the necessary nominations to include his name on the ballot paper, Conor was not bold enough to appear before the council. With this tweet, he announced his withdrawal from the election race. With the end of McGregor's political career before it even began, he can now focus entirely on his return to fighting. For the first time since that July 4th announcement, he mentioned Michael Chandler's name, turning that poor guy's life upside down. Immediately, poor Michael couldn't contain his joy. But unfortunately, a few days after Michael's joy, and despite Dana praising him in every interview, McGregor published this tweet that shook the foundations of Dana White and dashed all hopes hopes of his return. I want $100 million to fight at the White House and American Gold residency for my family and friends. McGregor managed to add insult to injury when, on the first night of October, after canceling his interview, he appeared on Fox News Channel with Sean Hannity, overriding Dana White's authority and lying to the world about the advertisement. And earlier that day, during a live broadcast with David Feldman, he announced his official preparations to return to fighting. Then, the next day, some hostilities towards Dana and the UFC appeared. He seemed in a very bad condition that day. Unfortunately, he cannot stop giving in to his cocaine craving. At the end of that week, which coincided with the UFC 320 event, he tried to bypass Dana White and negotiate directly with the White House administration. But on the night of UFC 320, we all got exhausted from what was claimed in the past days. Amidst signs of tension between him and Dana, the new UFC-affiliated anti-doping agency announced his suspension from fighting for 18 months for 3 whereabouts failures. The punishment will begin in September 2024, the date of the third time he failed to specify his location, and ends on March 1st of next year. This means that it will not affect the date of his return to the White House. McGregor accepted this punishment without objection, but what I didn't understand was why this wasn't announced earlier this year. If the third failure happened last year, how could Dana be promising us McGregor's return at the beginning of this year when he knew he had 3 whereabouts failures? The answer is simple. Drug-free sport created by Dana and Jeff Nowitzki after the cancellation of the USADA partnership because of Conor McGregor is an independent company affiliated with the UFC. This company collects samples from the fighters and sends them to WADA laboratories. The results are sent back to George Perot, the main investigator who worked with USADA in 2004 and is responsible for Dana and Jeff's anti-doping project. In the end, this company has the final decision on whether to hide or announce test results and when to announce them, as they did with McGregor. And imagine the reactions of Western audiences if this happened to a Dagestani fighter. Dana's first choice to fight at the White House has deteriorated. For God's sake, does this look like a man who is ready to return to fighting? Alex Pereira's stated desire to move up to heavyweight and fight John has potentially turned the tables, and Dana may eventually have to resort to the lesser of two evils. But as he himself said, it is still too early to talk about a White House card. We're not even looking at the White House card until February. We have literally not talked about one fight on the White House card yet. We won't even start till February, and then he's available or not talked about.